Imagine going on Survivor, one of the best shows ever constructed on Earth, winning the game, waiting several months, and finally watching the show on TV, only to be disappointed. You barely got any screen time, other people are given credit for your moves, and those incredible analogies you made that would even make the Survivor 44 cast envious just vanished. It's a hypothetical dream, sure, but for the top 5 contestants on this list, their Survivor edits devolved into nightmare territory. First of those is surprisingly Sandra Diaz-Twine. Fortunately, we're not going to be talking about her original season in the Pearl Islands, and instead swapping over to her tearing Sugar apart. Heroes vs Villains. For anyone unaware, Sandra was originally going to be on All Stars, but due to doctors discovering she had parasites, she had to take a seat on the Sandra bench, and thus Rupert was the only Pearl Islands representative coming into that season. Therefore, coming into Heroes vs Villains, Sandra was the furthest removed from Survivor, having last played in Season 7, while other old school returnees at the same time like Boston Rob, Jerry, Colby and the aforementioned Rupert at least participated in Season 8. This was the longest layoff any returning Survivor contestant had up until that point, so the fans were really excited to see all those super fun Sandra confessionals, right? Right, production? Hey, production, am I right? Hey, production! Oh god. Sandra admittedly received a pretty respectable first episode, featuring her breaking down her villain title, accompanied by some content pertaining to her marooning drama. And then she magically combust. It cannot be understated how mind-blowing her going 6 episodes with 0 confessionals are. It's by far the worst streak of non-content from a Survivor winner, and quite frankly, it's disappointing. Sandra was the first 2-time winner of the show, and is the only contestant ever to win on back-to-back appearances. While it is justifiable that she would be passed over in favour of the bigger personalities on the Villains tribe, like Coach, Parvati, Boston Rob and Russell, it didn't mean the complete annihilation of her edit. It genuinely felt like the editors did everything in their power not to show off Sandra, which is really disappointing considering we now know her as one of the best characters in Survivor history, which production in hindsight should have taken advantage of more. I mean, how else am I going to get my fix for Russell bashing? Even in spite of her limited edit this season, some of the phrases she said that made the air are even repeated to this day by the fandom because they're so iconic. Although this is a bit of a trend I've noticed in the late teens and early 20s of Survivor seasons, where producers had their obvious favourites they catered to, while ignoring a good chunk of other contestants. Talk about the rebellious years. From the person who played in the oldest season on this list to the newest, I'm fast forwarding all the way to Survivor 43 with the only male entry on this list. Gabler. If you predicted this man would win the show pre-merge, you're either psychic, winning the lottery, or getting struck by thunder. So enjoy that thought. I don't know about you, but when I think of Gabler, I think of this zany man doing weird things. Now, there isn't anything wrong with that, and considering Marianne was a zany personality who had a complex winner edit literally 1 season prior, you would expect that to carry over to Gabler, right? Nope. I don't know what beef the producers had with Gabler, but the poor man got literally every edit you wouldn't expect from someone that would go on to win the game. He was made to look clueless, adversarial, and does anyone remember the first few episodes when they put a lot of precious screen time into this storyline that Gabler could be medically evacuated? I mean, considering how tight screen time was this season, was that really necessary? Gabler was constantly shown as someone that bumbled through the game, needed people like Sammy or Cody to come to his rescue, and was referred to multiple times as an easy beat at the end. You would be excused for thinking Gabler would consequently end up as one of the final jurors, or even a losing finalist. But this should absolutely not be an edit given to a person literally 1 vote away from a perfect Survivor game. Post-game press confirms Gabler was playing a lot better than what the edit cared to show. A lot of people in their exit press actually reaffirmed Gabler as a genuinely likeable guy with good social skills. Moreover, he was an integral part of the Ride or Die alliance with Jesse plus Cody that decided on who to boot between Ryan and Cassidy, depending on who was booted on the other half of the tribe during the tribe split. This therefore allowed them to break the Coco power structure. I know people say Mike's winner edit makes sense if you really squint your eyes, close one eye, and then close the other and imagine literally anything else else, but I feel like this is aided by a lot of hindsight on a rewatch when you know he wins. Personally, I felt a substantial amount of people in the endgame had stronger edits than Mike, who would often be referred to as a GOAT or an outcast in the season. We're now on a season with 2 prominent returnees that make the endgame. On top of Redemption Island, you're not going to expect a newbie winner to get as much screen time as usual, but South Pacific pushed this to the extreme. The eventual winner in Sophie Clark was only 22 when she won, making her one of the youngest winners in Survivor history, and as a reward, Survivor turned around and gave her less than 2 confessionals per episode. Gosh, I really love watching a Survivor season and not knowing who the winner is. Sophie in total received a measly 25 confessionals, which, to put it into perspective, is the exact same amount of confessionals Jim Rice received. Except, he was the first jury member. Sophie returned for Winners at War and thankfully received a better edit, but similar to South Pacific, played a strong game, resulting in a substantial amount of the community considering her as one of the best players in Survivor history. So when you go back to watch Survivor South Pacific, it can be rather disappointing seeing Sophie's legacy starting off as a really uninspired one. Considering Sophie's snarky demeanour, often bashing on Coach and Brandon, it definitely would have lessened South Pacific's dark tone if we got more screen time from her. Instead, we got a lot of quote-unquote Apollo family content, particularly through the lens of Coach, which did become rather grating. I previously brought up Gabler on this list, but unfortunately the modern era of Survivor has returned once again with Erica Capricorn. Wait, that's my shopping list. Kasupanen. Unfortunately, Erica's winning trajectory wasn't quite as juicy, and if post-game content is to be believed, the editors actually may have tried to dilute her winning game on the TV screen. If you're able to remember back to Survivor 41 with me, as terrifying as that may be, Erica's storyline was in 2 very different halves. She had barely any content pre-merge, and then a respectable level of content once the tribes were officially together. The edit painted her as someone extremely lucky, but post-game reports indicate a very different shade. For example, Deshawn in post-game press actually said he intended to throw the challenge to get out Sydney, who had been getting too close to Danny. Instead, the editors favoured having a very early concept of the challenge throw aired, where Deshawn voices concerns about Erica, which at that point in Survivor 41 made everyone almost go, "Woo, Deshawn!" But who on earth is Erica? The merge is when Erica's edit becomes more substantial, where she begins to reference her lamb turning into the lion storyline, but due to the editing style, this really comes off as circumstantial, due to her visiting exile. Once again, she is demonstrated as being lucky, with everyone talking about her back at camp, and only surviving the Mergatory due to her reversing who won the immunity challenge and stealing immunity for herself. Except, shock horror, this was editing misdirection. I bet you didn't see that one coming. The Yase 3 were more than likely always going to be targeted this round, and the talking about voting Erica back at camp was because, well, she was the only one literally not at camp. Considering Erica was the first female winner in 6 seasons, it was rather disappointing seeing her winning edit be one where she only had 4 confessionals for the entire pre-merge. But Survivor editors, I've got to say, I'm not mad. I'm not mad, I'm just... Actually, scratch that, I'm mad. Erica's underwhelming edit juxtaposes Xander and Deshawn, who actually had really good edits despite being a 0-vote finalist and a 1-vote finalist respectively. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section, however, despite having far more consistent edits than Erica, Deshawn and Xander lose to most if not all the cast at Final Tribal Council. There are still people to this day that believe Xander and his better edit should have beaten Erica, even though he loses to everyone in the game. America. But when you ask the Survivor community for the most under-edited winner, 95% of the time you'll hear the words Natalie White, and also that Russell should have won. While every winner discussed had notable holes in their edit, not a single one could hold a candle to this. Yes, that is not Morse code. These were Natalie White's confessional numbers. And if it was Morse code, it would probably be saying help me. In total, she scored 15 confessionals, on average 1 per episode, with her first confessional being episode 4, and it was literally about a challenge strategy rather than introducing herself. Samoa is a season that pretty evidently suffered from producer favoritism, with almost 1/3 of the season's confessionals going to Mr. Hans. Mind you, he's a non-superior Russell in the Survivor community, but that's a topic for another day. People to this day believe Russell should have won Samoa, and considering he had nearly 10 times the confessionals that Natalie had, it's definitely an uphill battle to convince people otherwise. I think viewers need to remember Survivor at its core as a social game, and Natalie really played into that by caring about the contestants as people. She really tried to get to know them better personally, rather than Russell who viewed them as chess pieces. There's a reason why Eric is one of the first people in Survivor history to use his final tribal council question, instead telling the jury why they should vote for Natalie over Russell or Mick. However, because of production clearly thinking Russell played the more superior game, on top of him returning the very next season for Heroes vs Villains, they were incentivized to give him one of the biggest edits in Survivor history to hype him up. Did he deserve to have this much screen time, especially compared to Natalie White? That's something for you to answer in the comments. Stop! Don't do it. Don't click off. At least click subscribe before you check out another video on my channel, okay? Sounds good? And if you want a recommendation, you can watch my Modern Survivor season ranking, which I'm sure you'll enjoy. Nevertheless, have a good day. Oh, peace!